Hey guys, it's Jake here with eTrailer. Today we're going to be taking a look at, and I'm going to show you how to install the Roadmaster Direct Connect baseplate here on our 2024 Jeep Wrangler Unlimited. Your 5 main components are going to be your tow bar, which will connect your RV to your Jeep, your baseplate, which is a physical connection that the tow bar connects to, your supplemental braking system, which helps the Jeep to come to a safe and slow stop behind the motorhome, your diode wiring kit, which is going to transfer the lighting signals from the back of your motorhome to the back of your Jeep, and then finally your safety cables. This is going to come into play in an unlikely disconnect. If the tow bar were to ever come disconnected from the Jeep, those safety cables are going to kick in and keep the Jeep behind you so that you can get over to the side of the road and come to a safe and slow stop. This particular base plate is going to look really clean on the front of your Jeep when you're not towing your Jeep behind your motorhome. So you just have to unhook your tow bar, and then your base plate is just going to be left on the front of your Jeep. You can take these tabs off. You just simply pull this pin, disconnect the tow bar, and then this tab, you'll pull this little pin, twist the tab, and pull it out. It's also going to help to be a theft deterrent so that people don't steal your tabs. Integrated into the base plate itself, you're going to have these safety chain connection points that make it really easy to connect and disconnect your safety chains. I really like this wiring bracket that they give you because it holds everything. It's going to hold your diode wiring, if you decide to go with a like an Air Force One or something that uses an air chuck, it'll hold that. It has a hole drilled in it just for it. And then you can also put your emergency breakaway cable bolted onto the bolt that holds it onto the Jeep. I just really like how this is kind of like your main hub. So when you're hooking everything up, you get your 2 tabs hooked up, you get your safety chains hooked up, and you got to make sure you have all 3 of these connected. Now, as far as the installation goes on this base plate, it's pretty straightforward installation. You will have to remove the front bumper, which is just going to be 8 bolts and a couple of push pin fasteners. You pull the bumper off, and then this is going to slide in behind where your frame rail is at. The end of your frame rail will be here. You'll slide this up, and then you'll just bolt it right onto the end of the frame. I'd say probably the most difficult part about this kit is going to be that you will have to enlarge a few holes. The benefit of that is that you don't have to start from scratch. You are just enlarging them and you're not drilling new ones. But with that being said, hopefully with my help, you're able to get yours installed too. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. To begin our installation, we're going to have to unplug the fog light so that when we go to take our bumper off, it's not still connected. So it's going to be down here behind the passenger side tow hook on the front, and you can kind of see it. This is it right here. So we'll come around the edge. We're going to take this protective tape off. Peel that off. It is really sticky. We'll get this off best we can and then get that unplugged. Now, a trim panel tool may help you, or a flathead screwdriver. Get this disconnected so we can get to the actual tab on the back side. There we go. You see this little yellow tab here? That's what we're going to need to pull out, just like that. So it looks like this gray part pulls up. There we go. Oh, and it slides right off, just like that. You need to take a flathead screwdriver. A smaller one typically works better here. And we're going to have a push pin fastener right here and one a little bit further down, just keeping this decorative plastic piece to the top of our frame rail. Well, when we go to take the bumper off, that's going to have to come off with it. So I just like to take a paper towel, and if you get under the center of that fastener, you can pop it up. The paper towel is just to help to protect the plastic from getting any rub marks on it. We'll just pop that out just like that. We're going to have 2 8mm screws underneath this belly pan that we're going to have to remove. Now, underneath that same pan, we're going to have a lot of push pin fasteners along the edge here. You can use a flathead screwdriver. The trim panel tool is really a lot easier because it's designed to do this, because it has this little curve in the end. So you want to pop that center out and then pop the base out. I will tell you, as your vehicle gets older, these are going to be harder and harder to get out because dirt and stuff gets caught up in these teeth, and it makes it really hard to get the center portion pried out. But ours is pretty new. It's only got a couple 100 miles on it, so they're popping right out. Now you are going to have a couple more that are right up in here, and these small cutouts. And the cutout's nice because you can pull it right out. And once you get all those fasteners out, we can take this skid plate and set it off to the side. Take an 18mm socket. You're going to have 2 nuts on either side of the frame rail holding our bumper on. We need to probably use an extension in order to get this off. I like to break them loose with a hand ratchet first because they're on there pretty tight. Now with everything broke loose, we can come back with that same size socket and run them out. Is when you're taking these off, you'll want to leave one just barely on so that the bumper doesn't fall off of the vehicle. Take our bumper and we'll want to slide it off of the studs. It is a pretty tight fit. There we go. And now we'll set it off to the side. On each side of both of our frame rails, we're going to have a 16mm head bolt that we'll have to remove because we've got to take this bracket out. Need to take a series of drill bits working up to 9/16 of an inch and drill out this top hole on both sides of the frame rail and on both frame rails. Now we'll come back, test out our hardware. I actually only drilled ours out to a 1/2 inch because that 9/16 is a specialty drill bit. We have them here at the shop, but you probably don't at home, and you probably don't want to have to buy one. So you test it out for your 1/2 inch. It fits perfectly through. Test out your other one just to make sure. If not, you can always take a grinding bit or something like that, or if you have a file that fits in there, just file it out a little bit more so that the bolt fits smoothly through there. Now we're going to come back with some clear coat and clear coat these openings because we just exposed metal. Before we can put our base plate ends up into place, we have to remove this panel. This panel, it says in the instructions only for Rubicons, but the problem with it is you have to have your side plates mount on the sides of our frame rail here, and it can't do that because the plate's in the way. So we'll have to take the 16mm socket and remove them. Take this bracket. This is for if you have a non-Rubicon option on your vehicle. So if you have the Sport or the Sahara, something like that, we're going to need to trim these tabs off because this is what our plastic skid plate still needs to attach to. You'll mark it out per the instructions. I've got one cut out already. You're going to want to use a cutting wheel for this. If you have a Dremel with a cutting wheel, you should be able to still get through this stuff. It's not super thick, but it's too thick for tin snips. So we'll take our grinder here and get this cut out. And once you get this cut out, the only pieces that we're going to be using are these 2 little end pieces. This piece you can scrap. Now it's not a bad idea to run a file across this metal, especially if you have some of those jagged edges on there, just in case somebody later on, if they were to go work on your vehicle, or if you reach under your car to get something, you don't cut your hand on this stuff. Now we're going to take a paint pen and just paint this bare metal where we cut it so that it will help to resist that rust from forming. Now we're going to take these tabs and we're going to put it back onto its respective side. So make sure you don't get them mixed up. Put it back on, and then what I'm going to do is you can kind of see an outline where the washer was originally. I'm going to just line that up so that our skid plate goes back on where it was supposed to be. Take our bracket. You want it to be with the safety chain loop on the inside. Take it, lift it up until these threaded holes line up. Then we'll take our factory bolts, put those back into place. We have a little red Loctite on there. We're going to put red Loctite on all of our hardware from here on out. And you'll do the same thing for the bolts on the other side. We're going to leave these loose while we get all this hardware in place. Now we're going to take one of our long hex bolts, put a flat washer on it. You'll start sliding it through from the outside in this top hole. This is exactly why we're leaving all of this stuff loose, so that we can get the bolt to line up correctly with our hole. And we'll start coming out the other side, hold that pipe spacer there, and then we'll stick the bolt through the rest of the way. Put a flat washer on, a lock washer, a little bit of red Loctite, and then follow it with our nut. Repeat that same process for this third hole down, except you're not going to be using any pipe spacers in here. Now we need to get our hardware ready for this bottom hole. We'll take one of the shorter bolts that comes in your kit. You want to make sure that it fits the spacer block. We'll have a lock washer, then a flat washer, and then our nut plate is going to slide up and back here and line up with this bottom hole. You want to kind of test fit it a couple times. You may have to put a slight bend in it in order to get it to line up flat with the inside of this bracket. There we go, that looks good. We'll take it, and from this point you kind of can't really see anything, so you want to make sure it's threading on correctly and you're not cross-threading anything. There we go. You can always pull on the bolt while you're threading it on, but you should be able to thread it on almost all the way by hand. When we get ready to tighten down all this hardware, you want to be sure to have a pry bar, a large screwdriver. We actually have a hole alignment tool, and you'll want to make sure that these holes are properly aligned from the frame of our vehicle and the bracket. So make sure these are aligned and we can start tightening this hardware down. I will take a 19mm wrench and socket and get this hardware torqued down. Now you want to torque your hardware to the specifications in the instructions. And once you have everything completed on the one side of the vehicle, you can come back and do the exact same to the other. Now with our base plate brackets mounted up on our vehicle, we can turn our attention to the bumper itself. If you've got that sport model like we have, or the Sahara, whichever, we're going to have some of this plastic we're going to have to trim out. So we've got our bumper, this is the bottom of it. We're going to have to mark a line from the top of this little cutout here, straight over, and we'll use a multi-tool in order to do that. After you get those two small sections of your bumper trimmed, we've got a couple more things to do. We need to put our bumper back in place, and then we have to trim that skid plate on the bottom, that plastic skid plate. What we're going to do, since we have to install all the other components for this flat toe, like your braking system, your diode wiring, we're going to go ahead and install that stuff first before we put our bumper back on, because it's a lot easier to make your wires nice and neat run down through here, because all of those are going to have to come down to the bumper. So we'll go ahead and do that, and then we'll come back, put the bumper back on, and trim the skid plate. In your instructions, they're going to have all the measurements that you need in order to properly get this drawn out to be able to cut it out. The one tricky thing is that you're going to need an 1 3/4" hole saw in order to radius the corners so that it looks a little bit nicer when we put it back up. We'll start with that hole saw. You just want it to connect to both of the corners. Take a multi-tool and cut these straight lines out the rest of the way. going to come back with a file or a razor blade and clean up these edges. Now with our skid plate all trimmed out, ready to put it up in place. If you want to use the bracket that comes with the base plate, I highly recommend it because it'll fit your breakaway switch and your 6-pole plug. You want to take your bolts, I've got them in here already, I can pull one back out. You'll take the longer bolts that come in your kit with a flat washer on the top, drop it down through those bolts, or through the holes in our frame. Those are going to match up to this hole and this hole. You want to put this up first, and then we can put the rest of that wiring bracket up. So we'll get this lined up. And this can kind of be tricky. If need be, we can slide those bolts back out of there. But you got to get it around the safety chain loop and around this bumper piece too, because it's got to go behind that. Just take your time, be patient, and we'll get it mounted up behind this. There we go. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and take the screws that hold our bottom of this skid plate on. I'm going to put those back in to hold it up in place. Now keep in mind with these fasteners, you are going to have 2 extra because we have these 2 bolts sticking down. Now we'll take the larger pipe spacers that come in our kit. We're going to take our flat washer, slide it on there, follow that with a nylon lock nut. Take a 14mm wrench on the top and a 14mm socket on the bottom and tighten these up. I'm going to favor the bracket to the center of the vehicle just to give us a little bit more room to hook up our safety chain. So hopefully this video helped you decide whether or not the Roadmaster Direct Connect base plate is right for you and your 2024 Jeep Wrangler Unlimited.